So it turns out we stopped the rain after all. Go us.
Yeah. That's the season because it's hot and it's sunny, and then you got big rains.
Is that a shrimp farm?
Well, mangroves are basically, the main importance of it is it's the nursery of the sea. That's where all the juveniles hang out. They hang out when they're prawn size, like this size. They hide, get food for about a year, and then they start drifting into the mangroves. La guardería del mar. That's how it's called. Okay? 70% of marine life depends on the mangroves. If the mangroves wouldn't exist in the different places in the world, that 70% wouldn't exist. Coastal marine life, pretty much. Okay? To me, the least biased one is the one that was done by Ecociencia. Ecociencia is a scientific environmental organization. They concentrate on doing environmental studies about wildlife, population dynamics, species, inventories, just about anything. Okay, they surveyed all the mangroves before and after, in a 10-year span, and they found out that 50% had original been cut. So half of the mangrove. Now, that's the national average. Of that 50% cut, 25% was mangrove shrimp farms. And 1% from land shrimp farms, cutting on the edges to have access by boats. There's no roads, so you gotta, in the high tide you come in. And then the 24% was cut down to complete the 50%. By whom? Urban sprawl. Did you see the houses on stilts? So it's half and half between urban sprawl and shrimp farm, and the other 50% remaining. Larveros were the people that supplied the larvae, the shrimp larvae, to the shrimp farms. Because it's an ancient knowledge, people know where the larvae assemble in certain times of the year, calm bays, in the estuaries, in the mangroves. Catch them with very fine mesh, especially along the beach. You get a lot of bycatch of little fish in different shrimp species. So they select the shrimp they want, sell it to the shrimp farmer, and the rest goes back dead. That affected the fisheries. But then the hatchery method was discovered, which is very good because they found out how to hatch the eggs, from initially wild-caught females, which were really expensive and hard to catch. But with the hatchery method, they found a closed cycle, and then the fisheries came back up. The larveros went broke. In Ecuador, it started in the 70s. Especially it started with the white western shrimp, which is the native from Ecuador, Colombia, and Panama. The preferred species out of many because the tail is bigger than the head and they have the fastest growth rate. Okay, so that's obviously important. Ecuador became 92, 93 the largest producer of farm shrimp in the world. There was a lot of social conflicts at that time. People started to invade the mangroves. Mangroves are public. So anyone can go in and grab a piece of the mangroves, cut them down, and make them usually by hand. A lot of labor required. A few trees cut, one house. A few trees cut, another house. So it's not like you don't see it right away. The government, they don't care. Going to this useless swamp was always perceived like that. That's what happened in the last century. Shrimp farms started to being built in the mangroves because it's free. The ancestral users and traditional ways of living for people from the mangroves, the clam harvester groups, the concheras, they had their areas that each conchera group respected. They would get into conflicts with the local users, the ancestral users, okay, because they're taking away their areas. A lot of social tensions happen, but the local people eventually adapted. I'm talking specifically to Muisne, and it happened everywhere. They adapted. They found out, wow, this is much easier than being in the mud 4 or 5 hours, wet, muddy. The users would negotiate and sell the mangroves to the newcomers. Okay, I'll sell you this area, and you can build your shrimp farm. People would come, cut the forest and make these ponds. or just cut the edge where the dike is going to go and flood it, and then the mangroves die because they're permanently underwater. The conversion rate with our currency at that time, you would make $4 to $5 a pound, of shrimp. And so it was really the fastest way to get money, get rich overnight, legally. Okay. That's why it was so big. The local population, 90% of it, they converted their easier way of living to do anything related to shrimp farming. Normally you don't need a lot of labor, Well, in construction phase, yes, but then later to run it, it's quite simple. During the record years, a harvest of like the larger pond down there, 5 hectares would take about 3 days. Drain process, and so they hire people to cook. You get your 3 meals, you get money, and at the end you get all the bycatching fish. Very easy to make a pond to grow things there. The mangroves have 2 areas: the daily flooded areas and the occasional flooded areas. The occasional flooded areas are called firmes. Okay, you are not on land. You are in the firm areas of mangroves. You have only to deal with flooding. You make your house on stilts. You have the land nearby, but you stay away from weeds, from critters, from insects, from snakes, living there and building your little ponds there. Narrow, small ponds. The floodgates are made with 2 rows of sticks. And during the high spring tides, or the king tides, the water comes over the floodgate and can't get out. What it brings in is all what we call semilla, seed from everything. The seed from shrimp, fish. So you have a functional ecosystem in there, which each successive high tides, or especially during the spring, big spring tides and king tides, you get more nutrients. You don't have to do anything. We did that at the station. From 6 months on, you can start fishing with hook and line, getting fish for the daily consumption. After 8 months, you just put a net on the other side, take out the floodgate, and start draining it. And you catch everything. You get all kinds of fish, the size, plate size. We used to get in the pond that's 5 hectares, but we got 500 pounds of fish, gratis, for nothing, and about 100 pounds of prawns every year. But you have the land next to it. You can grow bananas and fruit trees, whatever you need, a little bit of corn, and rice. They started in some areas where mangroves naturally don't grow. They're called salinas, or salt flats. That's where they would make the ponds initially. People would make them on land, above tide mark. And how do you get the salt water? You make a channel through the land, and then the water comes in at high tide further inland. And then you pump it into a channel like this, which then has different floodgates for the different ponds, But what really stopped the mangrove cutting was the white spot virus. And that is mancha blanca. And that's a crustacean AIDS. In 2 years, the shrimp farming crashed from 100% down to 20% production. Nowadays, nobody's building shrimp farms since it crashed in '98. And there's no money available through grant money or projects to plant mangroves because large areas don't exist anymore. They either been reforested or regenerated. Scientists have seen that they wasted a lot of time and money on planting mangroves in areas where they would have regenerated anyway. Donors, they want large areas that can be monitored over time, and those don't exist anymore. Okay, and the shrimp farmers that have to comply with the regulations, they had a really hard time to find those areas, and they were planting for a while. Recently mangroves in areas where they naturally don't grow, and those are fishing grounds at high tide for local people. So they tore them out, what has been planted, and taking away the fishing areas, forcefully plant forests where they naturally don't grow. So with volunteers, what we can do, is go and plant occasionally in fringes, so you get the experience of what it's planting mangroves being in the mangrove habitat, going with a local guy, but it's planting on fringes, and we don't have any funds to do that, so we just do it from whatever we can, because I gotta pay the guy to take you.
Colección de semillas. 30, 30, 30 o 20, 20 y sembramos. Y después, relax. Vamos a pescar, fumar, comer fruta y bueno, eso. ¿Ya?
Sí.
Ya está mi comida, me la como también con un poco de coco, pescado encontrado, pero yo me como todo siempre que venga bien ahumado. Gózalo en Muisne, las cosas se pueden lograr. Para surfear directamente cuando está llegando montañita, también a meter un poco de ritmo, que la gente ya lo pueda pues escuchar, de verdad.
Try and close them all. Like, for real close them, not just pretend like you're closing them.
Oh, you're freaking filming him playing the game. That's so funny. Poor you.
First we both find this out.
Yeah. See. Oh, we go.